overnight.
Exactly.
All right, we're live streaming.
Got it. Thank you.
Beth's gonna make me host again. I'll keep an eye on if anyone else comes in. I've written down everybody that's here.
Okay. All right, so we'll call to order the June VAST Board of Directors meeting. Cindy, you're taking the attendance. I'm just looking around to see if there's any. Oh, there he is. Okay. Call to order. We'll have recognition of visitors.
I'll just say that we have Mike Miner from the Polar Bears, Dustin Turner from Smuggler's Notch, and Mike Mustachio from the Polar Bears.
Okay. Approval of agenda. Has everyone got a chance to look at that?
Yeah. Rutland County make a motion.
Rutland County move. Do we have a second?
Windsor County will second it.
Windsor County second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The agenda is approved. Secretary's report. Has everyone got a chance to go through that? Okay, I'll take a motion on approving the secretary's report.
Rutland County make a
Windsor
motion.
County make a motion.
Windsor County made a motion to approve the secretary's report. Rutland County second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the secretary's report is approved as submitted. Treasurer's report. Patty?
Yep. Okay. So the date is through the end of May, or 67% of our budget season. So again, I'm going to round the numbers. The budget is 3.3 million. Monthly activity was just shy of 28,000, of which 8K came from volunteer TMAs from the Trails Fund, and another 8K from the General Fund, and 10K from the SST TP for administrative services. So it's just very little income there, which is to be expected. Income to date or through the season at this point was 3.1 million. So we're short about 154K of what we had set as our budget for the year. As far as expenses, again, through May, the budget's 2.7. Our monthly activity was about 351K, of which 273K was in grooming. And expenses to season was just shy of 1.8. And I should have said on the overall income, we were at 95% of our budget. Compared to last year, this time we were at 96. So we're right on point year over year. And for our expenses, we are currently at 65% of our budget. Compared to last year, we were at 73%. And we all know that's based because of the snow or lack of snow this past season. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Patty. I'd take a motion on the treasurer's report.
Chittenden County would move to approve the treasurer's report.
Any second? I see Lamoille County seconded the motion. All right, any discussion? Carmen?
Was that Lamoille?
Yes. I assumed it was. Carmen put her hand up.
I have a question that's on part
And
of
that
the,
comes after we move and second, then we have discussion, and that's when questions are allowed.
no, I know, but that's why I was putting my hand up so that you would know I had a question.
Okay.
Sorry.
Jeff Halpin from Washington County second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, Carmen.
So I believe, well, I don't know, and I guess who sent this. I'm assuming, Cindy, you had sent this out on the management recap report.
Cindy sent that.
Cindy sent that. Okay, well, I don't, so under the other assets of stock, it says 36,146.88. And what is that? Is that signs and clothing for the store, or what does that stock kind of include? Because that seems to be a high number.
We were.
I mean, I get things are expensive.
We had some actual stock and a utility company donated to us 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was about 4 years ago.
And it's actual stock. It's a utility company. What's that?
Okay, I don't think that I guess I was maybe aware of that, or I forgot.
Yeah, where's the utility company? Was it Idaho,
Oregon.
Oregon? I knew it was somewhere out west.
I think, Carmen, it was when you were not director. So it wasn't that you forgot. I just don't know that you were aware.
Okay. I was just thinking stock, like physical stock, like when I saw it. That's why I was asking. So I was like, that's a pretty high number. So
Yeah,
Okay.
no, we generally call that like promo items, like our
It
shirts.
was, it was higher at one point. Roger, you have a question?
Yeah, Patty, you said we had 1.8 million roughly in expenses, and then you went to that it was 65% of our budget. Do you have a number of how much we were short?
Yes.
Like-
Well, if you, on the net income loss, it was 323K. And when you take the total month, year over year, we're sitting at 1.366 is the delta between the income and the expenses.
Okay, because you had 154,000 short on income
Yeah,
and 323,000 short on expenses.
well, income I expected, in expenses were only averaging 65% of the budget. And we are at 67% of the season. Last year, we had 73% of the expense budget utilized by this time. So,
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
and I think that's related to grooming, Roger, is the lack of snow.
Carmen, did you have another question?
Oh, no, sorry. I forgot to
Okay.
put my hand down. Sorry.
Right, that's all right. Or any further discussion? All right, hearing none, those in favor of approving the treasurer's report, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? All right, treasurer's report has passed. Next up, I don't believe we had any tabled items.
No,
All right, consent calendar. Do we still ask for a motion and a vote on that, Cindy?
honestly, I don't even know what it is.
No,
I mean, to be really honest, like it's been on the agenda ever since I've been at VAST for 9 years and we've never had anything in there. So if somebody wants to tell me what it is.
that used to be
Hey, Jeff's
that
back.
used- that used to be the executive director's report, the Trails Administrator's report. That can get taken right off. We don't do that format anymore.
Yeah, we do it lower down. Okay, I'll take it off. I'll try to remember to take it off the next one. I'll make a note right now.
And with that, I officially turn the meeting back over to Jeff Hay, who is not the vice president. He's the VAST president now. I thought that said vice still.
All right, so we are down to old business. Thank you for covering for me, Mark.
No problem.
First order of business later on this week is throwing this computer out the door and buying something that works. Anyways, don't see any old business. So new business, funding from the state of Vermont. Cindy.
Okay, we ended up, the governor did sign the budget. We ended up with $750,000 for equipment and $50,000 for law enforcement. The law enforcement money is specific for law enforcement. It cannot be used for anything else, but it can be used and will be used by the governor's council for either funding law enforcement patrolling or adding to the equipment that law enforcement needs. It's a pretty healthy fund at this point, so there's not going to be any surprises there. The biggest thing is that there were stipulations that came with the legislation in the transportation bill for the equipment funding. And I'm going to read through it. I will email this to you guys. And then the plan of action is to discuss it at the leadership retreat. I have been in touch with the Agency of Transportation because they will be the ones that oversee these funds and set up a process for us to get this. They call it grant money. To get this grant money, there will have to be a process for us to have a grant process for the clubs and then a grant process for VAST to use for AOT. They're not used to doing this. The majority or all of the money that we currently get from the state comes from Forest Parks and Recreation. So we're helping them build this system. But the biggest thing is that the stipulations that were put in place did not come from VAST. I don't know where they came from. I'm just going to, I have an idea that it came from some folks talking to their local legislators because it's fairly specific. So hold on while I read it to you. And then again, I will forward it to you guys in an email so you have it. And at the leadership retreat, what we will discuss is we have to actually set up the parameters for this, and then how we can work with these parameters that are set. They are set in stone. And I also have reached out to Legislative Council to get the intent of this, so we're sure what we're suggesting for a grant process will work. So let me just get this here in front of me. I'm going to ignore the portion about law enforcement. So $750,000 in one-time general fund monies as appropriated in the fiscal year 2023 budget and grants to VAST to support the equipment grant and aid program. VAST shall ensure that the equipment grant and aid program maximizes the geographic distribution and utilization of equipment purchased in whole or in part with the monies authorized in subdivision 2 of this section by implementing grant scoring criteria that awards equipment grants to applicants that have worked with neighboring clubs to groom at least 60 miles of trails, and the equipment to be replaced is at least 15 years old. So when I first heard about this, I panicked because, well, you're not panicked, but I was like, you guys, I don't know where this came from, because there's only 13 clubs that have 60 plus miles of trails. And it also mentions about working with neighboring clubs. So somewhere someone mentioned, I mean, they're also the geographic distribution. I don't understand that, because we've always been very, we haven't just put all of our money in one region of the state. But what concerned me more was I'll read that portion again. Applicants that have worked with neighboring clubs to groom at least 60 miles of trails and the equipment to be replaced is at least 15 years old. So one thing that we've talked about is that anyone that would fall into that criteria would be specific for that amount of money and not in the regular equipment grant process. Because right now there are clubs that have equipment that are less than 15 years old. And there are clubs that don't have 60 miles of trails. And there are clubs that are not necessarily working with their neighboring clubs. So we've had some questions about, well, could we include county clubs? If a county club was up and running and was, compliant state and federally, as a club, could they be considered a nearby club, and that the money could filter through that? So there's lots of questions. Again, I don't know where this came from, because when I talk to them, I never mention specific things like I've never mentioned club merger. I've never mentioned like clubs working together and stuff like that. That's why I think this probably came from someone talking to a local legislator. And I have some ideas, because I know who I have an idea of who implemented this. And when it was done, it was after we had a chance to testify. We had no longer had the ability to speak. Jeff Halpin has his hand up. Jeff Fay.
Cindy, I just had a quick question on this subject, and I wanted to let you finish, but is there any limitations? It's a lot of money there. It seems like what you're telling us, it seems like we're rather limited on how we can use that money because of the stipulations. So I guess my question is there any limitations on the amount that would go to each grant out of that grant money?
No, that would all be designed by you guys. So what we want to do at the leadership retreat or the board retreat is to talk about like, what are all of our options? So this money's going to sit there. It's our money. It can't be spent by anybody else. It doesn't have to be spent in 1 year. It doesn't, there's no other limitations like that, but it will not, it won't, it's just basically those are the stipulations. Is that you have to have 60 miles of trail or be working with a neighboring club that has 60 miles of trail. And the piece of equipment has to be 15 years or older. Now, this also, because when I testify, I'm very vanilla with them. I think I sent you guys the link of me testifying with Senate Transportation. This can also be, when I talked about equipment, it wasn't just about buying new equipment. So this is drags. This is, fixing equipment. This could be limb mashers, like, anything like that could be included in this, tracks, whatever.
A heck of a stipulation that seriously limits some of the clubs that could use the help, But
I know. I
That's
agree.
unfortunate.
I agree. And that's why I think, if we look at the pool of people that apply and they fall into this area, especially the 15 years or older, if we can work with, and it was Mark's idea, Mark Reeves, the county club, and Mark and Patty and I were talking about it. We had a budget meeting the other night and we talked about it there. And if we can include county clubs as being like a neighboring club, then maybe that money could filter down through a county club and go to a club that had less than 60 miles. So what we need to do is work with those, put together a whole list of things, and then we'll send it to AOT. And
Realistically, how many clubs do we have that groom 60 miles of trails?
13.
13. Okay. Yeah. So
13 out of 120.
yeah, that's kind of harsh. That's really unfortunate.
Believe, when I first heard about it, I reached out. I'm like, look, can you do how about 40 or 30? Just drop it down some. But they weren't, at that point, they weren't taking testimony, and I had to beg to get them to even put this money back in.
Yeah.
And anyway, so and then the stipulations came after I begged to get the money back in. But I think it had to come from someone reaching out to their legislator, because I don't talk like that. I don't talk about specifics. I talk in general. Like, we have 5,000 miles of trail. We have, I don't talk about how many clubs have this many miles, or we want clubs to work together. Like, I don't do stuff like that, because
Cindy, were they possibly talking about clubs working together where 2 clubs would add up to 60 miles?
Yeah. And if they're working together, I guess we could make up some descriptions of that too. And we should at the leadership retreat. So maybe they're working together on fundraisers. Maybe they're working together, on working on trails. And, I think we need to be as broad as we can to design this and give it to them. And then they'll obviously go in and take some things away. But I think the more we give them, the better we'll end up. And it's going to take some thought. And that's why I didn't send this out to you pre-meeting, because it's so shocking when you first see it. But we definitely have an opportunity. AOT wants us to design this. It's not in their wheelhouse. They want us to design it. So it's our opportunity to design it based on parameters and see how we can get it to work for us. Because AOT is going to want it to work for us.
Right. Yeah, it's good that you don't, speak in full, and, you generalize, but I guess from their perspective, they're not seeing, they don't have a very clear understanding of, what the general makeup or what the responsibilities are, for most of our clubs, as far as mileages and maintenance, right?
Right.
Yeah, no. At this point anyways, it's tough.
No, it's true, because I speak very generally when I speak to them. I speak about the need overall. Like, I don't get into specifics. So I don't know where 60 miles came from. Yeah. I don't know where 15 years older. I don't know where geographically, we do it statewide. So I don't know if someone feels like they're not getting grants. I'm just not sure.
Right.
Cindy, of those 13 clubs with 60 miles or more, how many of those clubs have equipment that's 15 years or older? So that number probably even shrinks, is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, probably. Well, it probably will by a couple, but a lot of our equipment is 15 years or older. the majority of our equipment is older than 15 years. But again, the way that we can look at this too is that whatever we end up with, we can look at it like, okay, so that if a grant comes in and it meets those needs, it puts them in that pool of money, which relieves the other pool of money. So, you know, it is still money for us.
But I guess at the other end, if we're somehow able to incentivize clubs working together to gain that 60-mile requirement, you know, that it would be, you know, a little kick in the pants to learn to work together a little bit more, right?
It could be, and that's something that you guys can talk about. You know, it could be, you know, it could be an incentive, and maybe that scores them higher. You know, because there has to be a scoring.
Right, if that would fly in their eyes, you know.
Well, that would fly in their eyes because that's part of it, is that they have to be working with the neighboring club.
Right.
Our thing was, can we consider a county neighboring club, because that might make it easier for us. But
Well, now see, by making a county a club doesn't mean that county technically is grooming, correct?
well, that's what I said when, you know, when it was brought up. But I think we put it all in there and we just see what sticks to the wall.
Well, my argument was that that's not what they said. They said works together to groom, and that's what a county does. It helps organize. It helps you know, work with the clubs in the county. They didn't say that they had to be grooming. There's legislative intent, and then there's what they actually wrote. Cindy disagrees, which is fine. We're going to sort it out, and I'd rather have multiple ideas, you know, multiple directions coming at this.
Absolutely.
But, it wouldn't surprise me if they said, no, that's not what we meant. But that's my creative take on it. And that's how legislation works a lot of times. It's creative use of language.
Well, that's also enforcement of any law too, rules and laws. You know, it's the interpretation of what's written.
Right.
So.
Okay, I have a couple of questions though, and I've had my hand up, so I guess I'm just going to interrupt at this point. Cindy, is it 60 miles and neighboring clubs and 15 years or older? Or Mark, maybe you can answer. I don't really care who. Or is it you only have to qualify for one of those 60 miles, working with neighboring clubs, or 15 miles?
It's all
or
three.
15?
It's all three. You can't just qualify for one. It has to be all of them.
Yeah. So there's like one club maybe that I don't even know if there's one club that hits all three marks.
There's 13.
That do the 60 mile.
There's 13 with 60 miles, but the majority of our clubs are 15 years or older. Marcus, 81 of our 144 power units are 2007 or older, is what Matt
Right,
said.
but how many of those 13 are 15 years and older too?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything else, Carmen?
3/4. Julianne
Okay,
has
well,
her
I
hand
guess,
up. Sorry.
I guess, if you're gonna consider, I know counties are clubs, but then my question becomes, if we look at that, then how many county clubs are actually in compliance?
Well, that's the other thing. There would have to be a county that's in compliance.
And we're not
That's my other
deciding,
thing.
but we're not deciding anything tonight. We're going to really discuss this at the leadership meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like we have a lot to discuss at the leadership meeting in a very short period of time.
Not
Well,
as
we
short
haven't-
as the Monday night meeting.
We haven't put the agenda together yet, but no, we'll spend a few hours working on this in August. Like I said, we're not in any hurry. The money's going to be there as of July 1st. It's our money. It's designated to us. And I think we just need to spend some time and work through this, and we'll have all the numbers for you guys as far as how many machines and, all that are 15 years and older. Matt just ran that report, but that fall into the 60, and how many clubs or how many county clubs are compliant and all that. We'll have all that stuff in August for you. Julianne's got her hand up, Jeff.
Anything else, Carmen?
I'm all set. Thank you, Jeff.
Go ahead, Julianne. Thank you.
I'm just wondering who is going to be our oversight at AOT? Do you know, is it going to be contracts? Is it going to be?
It's Joel Perigo.
Who?
Joel Perigo.
Okay.
Joel is who we work hand in hand with on the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. Know him very, very well. We've already been in touch with them, and this is totally, I mean, really out of their wheelhouse.
Right.
This is not what they do. And so that's why they want us to set this up. So this is a great opportunity for us to design this program and kind of, give it to them all and let them review it. I've already checked with Legislative Council about the intent of the legislation, and it's really going to be between us and AOT. So we have an opportunity to really design this program ourselves.
Okay.
An advantage, I think Joel's father was president of the Snowbees for a while.
Yeah.
You know that, right, John? Paul?
Yeah. And Joel's a snowmobiler himself.
Right.
And I do grants management, just saying. But anyway.
Perfect. You're on the committee.
Shouldn't have mentioned that.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? I would urge you to do some thinking on this between now and August. We can even put a few minutes in next month's meeting, board meeting, to discuss this a little bit further.
And can I just add too, that if you think of something that's sort of outside of the box, again, I will email this language to you, and just email it to me, because if there's some reports that we should run prior to the retreat to bring that we haven't discussed tonight or thought of ourselves, it would be great if somebody has some other ideas too.
Cindy, when you, can you and Matt kind of put something together that gives us that language and then specs out the 13 clubs or,
Yeah.
and then the age of the equipment?
Yeah.
That way we've got all the pertinent information together.
Yeah, we'll have that. I just mean outside of that, if somebody thinks of something, please let us know in advance if you could, because so we can run reports.
Yep.
Any other reports.
Yeah, I was just thinking, instead of Matt sending out an email, you sending out an email, that we just do one, and that way we've got everything together. Thank you. You're all done making notes because you're up next too.
Yeah, I'm good.
Fiscal year 2023 budget. First shot.
Okie dokie. It came in your board packet, but I'm thinking, well, no, I'll just run through it on paper. Let me just turn my light on. Okay, so basically, so this year we decided to do the 23 budget based on this past year's TMAs, because the past 2 years the winters have been fairly similar, been selling a lot more early bird and less regular season. And in the past, the budget has been built on the 2018 actuals, because that was kind of what we would perceive as a normal winter. So this year, we went with what we got for revenue on TMAs for 2022. And so included in your packet is, you've got my end of the year projection. Roger likes it color coded in green and red, or green and pink, because I don't like red, to show you for the end of the year projection, if it ended as the income better than what we projected, or pink less, and then the expenses, it would flip flop, and the green would be less expenses than we projected, and the pink would be higher. So some things have changed with end of year projections. There were some columns, some things that we moved around. We did TMAs differently. We moved postage around. So postage was a lot less, but we spent more sending out the TMAs through the company that we ordered the stickers from to do the mailing. But really, I just want to talk about the budget. But I'm happy to answer any end of the year projection questions. And for new board members, the end of the year projections, I update every month. And until we get to October, which is the beginning of our fiscal year. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where we're going to end up. And then at the board or at the annual meeting when we have our board meeting, then we discuss if we're in the black or not, how much money we're moving out of the checking account into reserves and what accounts, and that's at the bottom of this report. But for now, I'll just go through the budget. So pretty much budgeted everything, and again, happy to answer any questions. We did, the biggest thing to note is that between, and I think they're going to report on it when they talk about the working group and the changes in funding for grooming. And they wanted to do a couple of things. One, we've talked about a fuel increase because of the cost of fuel, and we need to offer some relief to clubs. And then also upping the percentage of what's put in the budget towards the cap. And so what it basically comes down to is that grooming, last year, the budget was 1.35 million. This year it'll be 1.55 million, but there wasn't enough on the income side. So there's a yellow line on the trails fund, and it says need to assign as far as the number goes, but it's yellow all the way across, that we would be taking 104,000 out of reserves to supplement that 1.55 million in grooming. My suggestion for you would be to that when you vote on this, and by the way, you have a month. We're not voting on this tonight. We're voting on it at the July meeting. But this gives you the opportunity to go back to your clubs to discuss the budget and then come back in July when we actually vote. But my suggestion would be that 104,000 wouldn't be moved unless it's needed. So it would stay in reserves until spring. And if it was needed, then you could vote to move it. But you would be voting on the budget, and the membership that's basically a placeholder. And that would be the maximum amount that would be moved. But we wouldn't move it unless we had that great of a winter that we're actually at the 1.55 million or 1.45, I guess it would be 1.41 million or over. Does that make sense? Did I just confuse everybody?
Oh, that makes sense, Cindy.
Okay.
Not confused, but if you don't move it, it's gonna look like you have an additional 150,000 in your budget. You put it two places.
I'm guessing it would stay in reserves. If we don't use it, it'd just stay right in the reserves.
Yeah.
Do that. Just something that doesn't make it appear like you have that extra 150 in there.
Well, it wouldn't be recorded twice.
Yeah.
It would just be there, and there would be an agreement if we get to the point where we need it, that's where it would come from.
Right. Otherwise, it just stays in reserves.
So we're able to do this year, Cindy, because we have a surplus, correct? Because
Yes.
we were in a healthy situation to be able to do that. And right?
Yeah, we do, Patty. And if you go to the last page, is it not included in here? No, it's not.
No.
Sorry, didn't include it. Oh no, it is. Mine's backwards. I'm sorry. Second to last page. It's got a big gray box, and then underneath it, it looks like this. Can you see that? It looks like that.
Yeah, the reserve accounts, yeah.
Okay. So at the end of this fiscal year, we're going to end with about $700,000 in reserves. And so what happens is that at the annual meeting, the board votes on which accounts, if any, to put reserve monies in. It basically takes it out of the checking account and just moves it into these reserve accounts. So the grooming contingency, where that 104,000 would come out of, would actually, is actually right now at 105,000. But we've looked at putting 132,000 in it in September at the end of this fiscal year. So that would bring that fund up to 238,000. So in October 1, that account will be at 238,000 if the board approves. And then that 104 would come out of that 238 if it's needed. And I'll tell you, we'd have to have a pretty damn good winter, and I hope we do, to get to $1.55 million expenses in grooming. And believe me, I mean, I hope we do. I don't want to have years where we have $700,000 going to reserves. Because it's basically coming out of the checking account. It's not like that money just comes out of thin air. And so those reserve accounts, again, the board will vote on it by percentage, and which are the orange columns. So at the September meeting, annual meeting, after the annual meeting, when you have your board meeting, you'll be voting on percentages. And I've got it mapped out right now at 19% for grooming, 5% for vast equipment, 5% for the vast building, 15% for emergency, 17% for our new insurance company, 8% for disaster relief, 4% for special projects. And then I've also proposed a new column this year called vast club equipment. And that would be 27% at 188,000. And the reason that I've done that is because the past few years, Matt's come to me a few times and been like, God, Cindy, if I had $30,000 more, it come to us because it's all been voted on by the board, or 50,000 more, I could help 5 or 6 more clubs out or 12 clubs out. And you guys have gone ahead and approved that. And so by setting up this reserve account, it's allowing us, because I'll be like, okay, take it out of disaster relief, or we'll take it out of this relief but this way now there's a designated account in case there are, like, we need a few additional funds to be able to help out a lot more clubs with vast equipment for your equipment, for club equipment.
Quick question.
Go ahead, Carmen.
And I Mark, you might be better to answer this. I'm not sure. On the AORRG, I know that we approved monies to kind of get that kind of up and running and all that we needed to do. But this is 100,000 in here, and I just feel like I remember the number being more for insurance purposes, or have I confused myself completely regarding?
I can answer that, Mark, if you want me to.
Okay.
All right. So, Carmen, we have not taken any money out yet for the insurance company because it has not been approved. It's supposed to be approved anytime, any day now. So we have not moved that money out. So that's why it's a little confusing. You see under my notes, it says, like, under emergency, 300,000 of this will move to the insurance company. And then out of the insurance company, it says 50,000 will move to the CD. Those are my notes because you guys have already voted on all that, but we haven't physically moved it yet because we haven't needed to move it. We haven't needed to start that line of credit or letter of credit yet because the organization has not been finalized by the Department of Financial Regulation.
Okay.
So
But
that's
so that's
why.
the money we approved to kind of hold right now to move forward with all of it then.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the new money would be the 17%, which is 118,000 would come out of the reserves from this year. That's what you have not voted on yet. And that would be because we talked about putting money in every year for it. But the other stuff you've already voted on, we just haven't moved it out yet.
Okay.
Roger, go ahead.
Cindy, you had mentioned at the beginning of this, you're talking about some sort of fuel increase or surcharge. What are you looking at for that? Is that a small fee per TMA sold? What's the idea for that?
So, well, first off, I'll let Jeff answer that. But the thing is we decided, or the idea was this 104,000 this year would be instead of a TMA increase because it wasn't a good year to do a TMA increase. And then the board would evaluate next year whether they wanted to continue to take this money out of a reserve account or if they wanted to do like a $5 increase or something like that. Jeff, did you want to talk about this now, or are you going to talk about it when you come to your line item?
Either way, it kind of overlaps, so. But we are proposing a increase to the grooming rate, which essentially is not going to cause a TMA increase, but will also help with fuel expense. We aren't really looking at doing a full, $20, this is earmarked for fuel type of increase. With a marginal season we had last year and the cost of everything else going up, we felt that trying to maintain the cost of the TMA this year would be more important than, trying to overflood our budget. We're coming out with $700,000 in the black. We're using some of that to go back into the grooming to help increase the rates a little bit. So that's kind of in lieu of a direct fuel subsidy, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I certainly, I wasn't really in favor of a $20, $30, $40 increase. I'm not necessarily opposed to a small increase, but given our surplus, I think this is a good move. What I don't want to see is us next year say, well, we didn't increase last year, so now let's do $20. If we think we're gonna increase 20 next year, and I'm just throwing numbers out there, I would rather soften the blow this year and do it incrementally. I think we've learned in the past that hasn't worked well for us to do large increases, and maybe this year goes well and next year we only do a $5 increase or something. This seems like a great plan, and I mean, I think we're lucky to have the surplus that we do, and I think for us to sort of advertise / promote that we're kind of giving back to the members with this surplus will do us a significant amount of good.
I'd have to agree with Roger on that. It makes great sense.
Yeah,
I think most of our membership is going to understand that the cost of everything has gone up hugely this year too. So that would definitely help things fly a little easier, I think.
I agree. I mean, I think that's why we headed this direction. Believe me, I head to Maine next week, coast of Maine with my RV. It would have been cheaper for me to rent a house on the coast of Maine and drag my RV over there. But, I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that people are going to limit, not everyone, but some people might be limited by the cost of fuel. And go ahead.
We have seen in the past that we get the annual meeting and somebody stands up on the floor and says, I think we need to implement a, $5 increase to cover fuel. That could be a possibility as well. And then we just, then we decide how to do it, in our little after annual meeting. But I think the general consensus is that we've sort of learned in years past that we do the $5 increase more often and not do the $20 increase every 3 years or 4 years. So I think, I think we're set for this coming year, but the following year, I think we'll take a look and see what a $5 increase will do. And maybe part of that increase goes to increase the club dues. So more of it's getting directly to the clubs. So, but this year we felt, as I said, that it's not a great time to increase our prices. I think this is the year that New Hampshire goes up with their second step in their 4-year plan or 3-year plan, whatever it was. Maine, I believe, is going up. So maybe we can turn the tails a little bit and say, hey, we didn't go up this year.
So with those increases, where is that going to put them compared to us, Jeff?
I don't have the direct numbers. We're still going to be probably the highest.
Right.
But we're, as I've explained before, our funding mechanism is a whole lot different. And our membership's, a third of everybody else's, at least a third of everybody else's. So, I mean, we're about a third of Maine, we're half of New Hampshire, and we're a quarter of New York. So
yes, but our general overall product, our signage, our grooming, everything is exponentially better and, you know, in many people's eyes.
And it comes down to, you know, we're self-funded. I mean,
Right.
we're paying ourselves to ride.
Yes.
Basically.
Yep.
So,
So, snowmobile
I-
listed as 149 for a non-resident, non-club member.
where's that? New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
Yeah. So,
I think this is just really going to help us in the, you know, at least for me, there's been a significant amount of outcry over the last several years of we need to take our money, we need to put it towards trails, we need to put it towards trails, we need to put it towards trails. So I think this is a good proposal for sure, and it's going to make a lot of sense for us.
Yes, and following back on what Roger said earlier, but, you know, I mean, if we feel there needs to be an increase, you know, would we be better off, you know, taking a couple small bites as opposed to one big bite? I just think it's something to keep in the back of our heads moving forward with all of this.
Hey, Roger, the people that keep talking about, you know, the money needs to go to trails, where do they think the money's going now?
Well, they've seen over the last several years an increase in our percentage going to administration, which is noticeable. It's not abnormal, and Cindy has been very good at giving us a real perspective on what other associations spend on administration. And for me, it's a fairly easy sell when it comes to explaining what our administration has done for us and the changes that we have made over the last, you know, 5 to 6 to 7 years. So it's not that hard of a sell, but it's nice to finally go back to the table, hopefully, and just say, here you go, guys, this is the plan moving forward. And you know, again, I think it's gonna behoove us, not just to our county folks that are involved as volunteers, but to our members as a whole, to advertise this as a way for us to say, hey, thank you for being dedicated members. We're trying to get back this year, in a year that's going to be tough for everybody.
Absolutely.
I think the takeaway is you're always going to see increases, whether it's administrative or on the trail side. You know, you just always, I mean, it's just everything's gone, especially now. It's like under a microscope, everything is going up.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Cool. Well, all right. Well, if anyone wants like a bigger paper copy rather than a little copy, let me know. I'm happy to mail them out on a big tabloid sheet, size paper. Just shoot me an email and or Mandy, and we'll make sure that you guys get that so you could present it. And then you guys will be voting on it next month. One more thing to add. Sorry, Stan, as an introduction of visitors, Stan's here, and he's always here. So I forgot to introduce him as a visitor. And Ed Heberbrand, I think, is still on. He came in earlier.
Quick question. So one of the things in the budget that's noticed is going to 3 issues in 2023 for the Snowmobile Vermont magazine from 5.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that. So what? Just out of curiosity, what times of year are you looking at? I guess. Are you just trying to do like a spring, fall, winter, or?
Yeah. No. Thanks, Carmen, for asking. So yes, I had Beth run the numbers because we always want to make sure the magazine is paying for itself. But with the lack of advertising because of COVID and the cost increase of paper and production and all that, we want to make sure that the magazine pays for itself. So there'll be 3 magazines instead of 5, and 1 traveler's guidebook, just like there always is for the traveler's guide. So that would be like an early winter, a winter, and a late winter would be the editions of the magazine. So the late winter would still include all the club events and all that kind of stuff. And then of course the annual report, but that funding comes out of the annual meeting line item. Just to make sure that it's still paying for itself.
Okay, so I'm sorry. What was the I'm sorry. I got the 3 issues, but then you said the traveler's guide.
Yep, the Traveler's Guide,
Okay.
which comes out in the fall, and then the annual report that will come out in August.
So I guess a word of advice to clubs is to get your information into Beth sooner rather than later, so you can get the bang for your buck in that first early winter edition. I'm sure.
Yeah,
she'll-
she'll be in touch with all of you guys and, and the advertisers and all that stuff like she usually is.
And here's a little bit of a different question. Have we ordered the stickers and the paperwork for next year's TMAs?
Yeah, we already have it.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll be on board, you guys, to sell October 1st. We've got everything. So there won't be any delay. Everything will be mailed out. We've got everything.
That's a paper we didn't get last year, Pat.
I know.
Yeah, but we had them switch over the year and everything. But yes, we've got it in-house. It's ready to go as of October 1st, and everything will be mailed right as people order it.
Any other budget questions for a first shot?
Not as of right now, but subject to change.
And feel free to call me. You don't have to wait until the next board meeting. If you have a question, you're presenting this to your county or your clubs, please feel free to just pick up the phone and call me. Or email me or whatever works for you, or I'll Zoom with you or whatever.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, Congress update. Matt, me, Cindy, Mark.
It was good. There's lots of corn. There's nothing else in Iowa. But the good
ski
thing,
area.
we did find a ski area. The funny thing is that the road was at the top of the ski area. Went down into like a gully. But no, it was good. It's always really good networking. And that's really what I go for. I don't go for like the social events and stuff, but the other guys like that kind of stuff. But I really, they go to all the meetings too, but I thought the meetings went really well. Came back with a few ideas and a few concerns from other states to look into for our state. And I thought it went well for me.
Can you elaborate on what those concerns were?
Yeah, one of them was the state of Wisconsin is having some issues with the language of calling private land if it's owned by a commercial, like a logging company or a commercial dealer or developer, if that's actually private land versus public lands. So maybe there should be a third category of commercial lands. And so I've asked them to send me the suit that they're involved in and all the parameters. It's bigger than vast. I mean, basically everything that the state does, not just for recreation, talks about private and public lands. So I'm going to be tracking that through the state of Wisconsin. That was my biggest takeaway.
I talked to, I don't know, I wouldn't say a lot of people about the RRG, but several that were very interested in it, more from individual club standpoint, because in a lot of places, the state doesn't necessarily have a general insurance policy, but a lot of clubs are seeing issues with it as well. I actually spoke to a guy who formed a captive for loggers in Pennsylvania, and he thought this was probably going to be a good idea as well. I have mixed feelings about overall going. It was fine. I'm always happy to talk snowmobiling. And I did talk to a few people about the RRG, but maybe it was just the fact that Iowa didn't do much for me. The overall conference, it was okay. One of the things I was sitting in was about people riding off trail, and the big controversy was, well, you can't call it all off trail. Some of it's back, and it just evolved into nothing coming out of that time, basically. So I have mixed feelings about the success for me personally.
Well, even the even the backcountry areas are having out of bounds issues.
Yes.
And that's, I mean, most of that is Bureau of Land Management or National Forest property. So that tends to shut down large tracts of land when they start having those issues out west.
Yeah.
But everybody has some sort of trespass issue going on, from, coast to coast, and even within the provinces, they're having issues. So it's kind of an endless battle, but the manufacturers are sort of coming around to seeing some of the, I won't say errors of their ways, but some of the harm that they've kind of brought on with their marketing over the last 5 or 6 years. So they're trying to do a little correction on that. But I think, it's good to, like Mark said, it's good to sit down and just chat with people about, what's going on in their state and in their association, and,
Any discussion about electric snowmobiles? Did you guys discuss that with any of the states at Congress?
Actually, Tyga was supposed to be there and they did not show. I don't know.
They're getting a hard time from Ed Climb and the Manufacturers Association. So it was very minimal discussion. Pretty much the discussion was they're not ready. The machines aren't ready yet. And that there's, needs to be a lot more work done. The majority, like what Jeff was saying, that was the majority of conversation was about trespassing and off-trail riding. And it was a coast-to-coast discussion. And sometimes you do get lost when you're talking to people from Yellowstone, where it's totally different than where we are. But the meetings that Matt and I sit in, the trail administrator meetings, it's pretty interesting. I mean, there's different states that have done different campaigns about off-trail riding, whether it's videos or signs. And so that was pretty cool to get their links and their copies of their signs and things like that.
One of the most interesting things to me was British Columbia. They have riding areas generally, and they have caribou herds that migrate. And what they've taken to doing is putting collars on caribou to track the herds, and those tracking will notify the association when to close down certain areas, so that people, because they don't want people riding through the caribou herds. And what they do is they'll close down that area. It's like polygons. They'll close down the area where the herd is, and they'll close down like 2 or 3 around them at the same time. And they're able to do that on the map. Now that has nothing to do with anything here, but it was interesting. It's an interesting take on a different type of riding in a different environment that I don't know when or if I'll ever be able to experience. So things like that are interesting. Hearing about, similar issues that we have to what we have like in the UP of Michigan. That's always good. Having informal conversations where I was able to talk about electric snowmobiles, and people were not anti, they were interested in the experience, understanding that the limitations they have. So like everything, there's good in it. So it was fine. I lost $5 in the casino across the street.
Well, that's not bad. Five is reasonable. I find it interesting, Cindy, that like Climb, they were against the electric snowmobiles.
Well, it's not Climb, it's Ed Climb.
Okay.
And he's the president of the Manufacturers Association.
Right. Just because these things are not trail ready. I mean, they're still developmental stages.
Yeah, he's very set in his ways. He's been in his job for a long time, and he's it goes back to the old politics with AXA and all the other stuff that we got out of years ago. He's kind of part of that clan of, doesn't like change. So he's kind of fighting, what was it a couple of years ago, Pat, that it was the Russian snowmobiles or Sweden I think it was Russian snowmobiles, and he was all on Jim. He was all up in arms about that. And so, but it's not Climb as in Polaris and Climb. That's
Right.
just his last name.
Yep.
Maybe it's the same family. I don't know.
It's Clem.
Clem. Okay.
Yeah. But it's the not invented here syndrome.
Right.
One of the 4 manufacturers didn't come out with it, so obviously it can't be any good.
Right. It's like how everybody felt about Toyota before they were built in America.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He sees it some kind of a threat, some type of a threat to Cindy as well, or to the manufacturers, or
No, I think he just is very old school and doesn't want to change and is very controlling. I just, he's
No.
just
Anytime
his
you
ways.
introduce a new manufacturer into a closed system, somebody's going to lose market share. And that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you every one of those 4 manufacturers is working on their own version of an electric, whatever.
Absolutely.
So they're just 8 steps behind, that's all. But they have the ability to make those 8 steps up in a fairly short amount of time.
They
but-
just need to hit refresh on their association, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Working group. All right. Matt?
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
muting myself. I'll be back in a minute.
I was trying to remain muted and hope nobody looked at me, but no, there's not a lot to report. There was a great deal of information that was sent out to the Trails Committee and the Resource Committee from the work group. I believe it was last week or the week before. I don't even remember. They all blend together, but
Wednesday.
it was Wednesday last week. Okay.
So.
So it was sent out for them to look at, discuss with their clubs and counties, and we're going to have a Trails Committee meeting in July to kind of go over it and see what people think. I've had some feedback from a couple of the county trail coordinators, and there's some definite concerns. But I told them they needed to put that concern into an email to the whole group, and we need to collectively work through any of the, issues or drawbacks or problems they see and try to find ways to make it a viable option for all clubs if they feel it's going to affect some of their clubs drastically. So that's really all there is to report. And we sort of are at a summary of all the information and have, like I said, put out a marked up trail policy manual and some potential changes to the grooming contracts and how they would work next year. So we're getting close to, like I said, hopefully a resolution to all the great work that the Resource Committee did. Hopefully we can implement some of those thoughts and ideas that they gathered into trail policy relatively soon. So,
Matt, may I just ask you a quick question? Have you spoken to Terry? Because I kind of got an odd text message a couple days ago from him.
yes, I have spoken to Terry.
Okay. And can somebody just tell me when the July Trails Committee meeting is? Because I've heard some things. I've heard that some people were not aware of a meeting and didn't show, and they thought it was canceled. And so I'm just, if I could know to make sure.
The Monday before the board meeting. I don't know what that date is, but see, if the board meeting is on the 25th, that would make it the
18th. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that, and what time, like what time is that? I just want to make sure because there was some miscommunication.
6 o'clock, just like this one on Zoom.
Okay.
The same channel.
Okay.
And there was an email that went out to the Trails Committee about the change in June's Trails Committee meeting. It went out a little bit later than Matt and I had wanted it to, but we kind of hashed around whether we wanted to do a working group meeting or Trails Committee meeting, and we thought the working group would be a little more productive this month, and that we'd get everybody together next month. And based on what comes out of the Trails Committee meeting, we will have hopefully a proposal or some additional information for you guys on this board in July as well.
I'm not sure who to ask this to. I'm just going to ask it generally. What's the timeline for the board needing to approve trail policy? Like, are we thinking are we going to talk about it in length at the spa day and vote after that? Or are we going to try to vote at the July meeting? Just looking for an idea, just so I can plan my county meeting accordingly.
Matt, I don't know that we need trail policy voted on until even October.
Yeah, I think the key is going to be, I mean, if the Trails Committee is supportive of it, then that'll help. But until they're supportive of it, the board won't even see it. So
right,
that's going to be the hang up, depending what folks think about it.
Yeah, because I'm struggling, like, obviously, the ideal thing would be to have a county meeting prior to the Trails Committee meeting, but I think after they get through that meeting, I think it'd be better off. I think some of the information would be some of it would be settled on, I would think, but yeah, I just don't want to be caught with, showing up to a board meeting with the expectation that I'm going to vote on something without making sure my county is given their input. That's all.
Agreed. I
No.
agree with you, Roger.
Our intention is to have you guys, contact your county, contact your clubs within your counties, and I would assume that would probably be after next month's meeting. Or you can, by email, you can just let them know what's going on out of this meeting. You don't always have to have a full-blown county meeting. You can send out emails and let them know, bullet points of this meeting, and let them know that there's Trails Committee meeting next month with some changes going on. All your county trails coordinators have all the information. So I would urge you to get in contact with your county trails coordinator, and maybe those of you that can get together, have a discussion amongst yourselves, and then send something out to your clubs within your counties.
Yeah, I was given some pretty good information, well, sufficient information from my trails coordinator. I'm trying not to get too vested / worked up over it until it's gone through that layer of the organization,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I would let your clubs know that there are, some potential changes.
Yeah, I think the intent here is to definitely get it back to the counties for discussion, to all the clubs. And I do think the work group realizes that a number of the counties are not currently meeting during the summer months. So it's probably going to have to be something that it's kicked back to September almost. But at least if the information is out there, there's a lot of information. So it's going to take quite a while to digest it, run different scenarios, discuss it with your clubs, and see how it pertains to each individual scenario. And I think a few months' time is definitely warranted to look over all this. So we will need some time if we change grooming contracts, though, to build things into our database. So, probably September is going to be when we're going to need to probably have things sort of finalized by at the latest, I would say. Just a guess, but.
All
Hey,
right.
Matt, can I just ask you on your Trails Administrator report, did you mean May 27th? Because it's stated June 27th, which would be today.
Or,
On your Trails Administrator report that you sent out, aren't these your like minutes from May?
oh, for the work group meeting?
I
No,
know,
Carmen.
it says Trails
This is Matt's,
Administrator report.
this is Matt's report to this board today.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Oh, at the top. Okay, I was just looking at it, trying to figure out where I put June. I very well could have written it wrong.
Oh, it's up in your header. It's a report for this board meeting. Okay. And I'm open to questions on the, work group too. If anybody wants to send me an email, give me a shout. I've willing to come meet with clubs if, they've got questions.
I make Brian do it.
That works too.
Yeah.
Brian's right on board with us. So, okay. I think that's it for business. Anything else that, not being around for the agenda, was there anything added to the agenda, Cindy, that? Okay. Let's see, Vermont Snow Trails Conservancy. Oh, excuse me, Northeast Chapter. We had our annual meeting out in Iowa. The officers were reelected. Gary Broderick as chair, Kim Bergeron as co-chair, myself as secretary treasurer. Spring ride and meeting is going to be February something up in Maine. I don't remember the exact date.
It was liquid last I knew.
Yeah, I think we're closing in on it because I know the weekend that we had kind of picked has got some other stuff going on in New Brunswick. So USA had their annual meeting out in Iowa as well. We had 2 officer elections that didn't change. Trying to think which 2 it was.
It's co-chair and
Co-chair and secretary.
treasurer.
Secretary treasurer. No, co-chair and treasurer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those stayed the same. Co-chair is Scott Jones from, Utah/Texas.
Colorado.
Colorado, there you go. And treasurer is Janelle Cuckoo from
Colorado.
Yep. So, and nothing really earth-shattering. Again, trespass is the hot topic. And as Cindy pointed out, there's, everybody's kind of got their own way of dealing with it. Stepping up enforcement has been, shown to be probably the most effective, but trying to get the people in the right places to do that enforcement is the hard part.
And it's not just snowmobiles. They're having it with off-road vehicles and UTVs and
Yep.
all over the country.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Vermont Snow Trails Conservancy.
Nothing.
Thanks, Jim. Turn the lights on or something. Law enforcement. Cindy? Nothing? Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. Nothing. They're working.
Yeah.
When
no,
does the state take that over from us? I
July-
guess that's why I want to.
July 1st, we're ironing out the details for the new lease agreement for winter use. And the bridges that we should be, that we'll be redecking will start at the mid to late July when Munson gets the wood in. Yeah, that's about it.
We probably ought to think about some kind of decking in the winter. I know I've been checking the new bridges out. They're pretty nice, and it's, it could get expensive to start redecking them very often if we had to.
We're not responsible for redecking bridges after July 1st.
Okay. I just thought they.
I mean, there might be some wear and tear that we might have to help with and things like that, but it's really not going to be our responsibility.
Okay.
Unless things are like majorly torn up, but it's just like doing our other bridges.
Okay.
Oh, let's see. Awards and nominating. Patty.
Yeah, so the groomer jacket actually came, so I actually physically have that for the groomer of the year. The blue signs like the club, the project, and those types of things, Ken has the order, so that's with Ken now. And Vermont Engraving has our awards order. We're just working on speeches is the next phase of getting ready for the annual meeting.
You go, girl.
Thank you, Patty. Yes, I do know I owe you some stuff, so. It'll come eventually.
That's okay, we got a little time.
Yeah, it's always getting shorter. Bylaws and policy. Mark.
Now that Cindy has presented the budget, we will sit down and start talking about any bylaw changes that we feel may need to be made. So in the next week or so.
Okay.
That's been my report since she started on the budget process.
I was gonna say, I'll be in Maine next week, my friend.
Oh,
but-
all right, that's
So
right. You're in Maine next week, week after.
Yeah, let's go with the or so. Yeah.
That's right. I've used that same report for almost 2 years, Mark. So. Let's see. Annual meeting. Anything new and exciting?
Well, the most important part of the meeting has been figured out, the food.
Yeah.
We've got the menu down and the cater all set up, and so that's pretty exciting to have that all done and out of the way. We have a design on, and I believe we're having made up some shirts for volunteers to wear that will have something about Essex County and the vast annual meeting that we'll be able to hand out to the volunteers. Other than that, I think everybody in Essex County, all the clubs have been really good about pitching in and taking a job, taking all the items that need to be taken care of and getting them done. So we're moving right along pretty good.
Great. Thanks, John.
Quick question.
What?
Are you going to do pre-registration for meals again this year?
Pre-registration? I guess I don't know.
I don't think they are, Carmen. We haven't really talked to them about how they're going to do their tickets and stuff. So I don't think John knows yet.
Okay.
We just did tickets day of last year. We didn't do any kind of pre-registration.
Yeah, the reason to do pre-registration is if the club or the county really wants to know how many people are coming and they're going to supplement some of the costs. But you can also do that even with the ticket sales day of.
Okay.
They just want to know if they're having hot dogs or hamburgers anyways.
And John, I have to joke and say, I saw your truck at your office last week and I almost walked in and said, I thought you were retired. I moved everybody to Plainfield, so I go by John's office. And he's supposed to be retired, but I saw your truck there last week.
I still got a few items to clean up there, but I'm sitting on my deck at camp looking out at the lake right now, so it's pretty nice.
Nice.
Absolutely. No executive committee, finance. I think we pretty well covered that. Long range planning and organization. Mark.
That's been, we are waiting this week for word on our licensure Word was at the end of last week that they were getting ready to hand down our licensure for the RRG. And so we're just waiting on pins and needles for that.
Great.
Oh, and we got some sort of a meeting coming up in August at Killington. I think it's nominally hosted by the Long Range Planning Committee. I don't know. That's what it's been in the past. I don't know if it still is this year or not, Cindy, but here to mention it again.
I don't think it is. I think we're just waiting on to what sugars off as far as agenda items go. Like right now, we know we're going to talk about the funding through the state. And then if we need to finalize and have the board work on what the working group has been working on, but I would say that you're off the hook for long range planning committee presentations.
All right.
But I'll let you know. Who knows? Something might pop up at the last minute.
You can say that may change.
Unless you come up with something you want to do
I'm
too.
not planning on it.
Yeah.
So that's it for us.
Okay. Resource committee, you guys are pretty busy doing your own thing, aren't you?
Yeah, nothing to report there.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll keep you around for a little while longer. Personnel, Julianne.
Yeah, hopefully everybody got the application form for Cindy's evaluation today. If you didn't, let me know and I can send it to you. And if you could get it back to me as soon as possible, I'd really appreciate it. More participation, the more valid, more credibility we have. So thanks.
Julianne, quick question. Just, I did open it up. It looks like there's just really a comment section. So do you want us to comment and incorporate some of the part of the executive leadership kind of bullet points that you have?
Yeah, as they apply, and I just, if you have had an experience or something, just, Cindy's great, but, say why you think she's great as it pertains to each of the topics.
Okay.
Thanks.
Or not great, but be specific.
Right.
With instances, like, well, I
all-
talked to her on the phone and I felt she was rude because I asked her this and she, or whatever. She never calls me back. Like, be specific.
Well, I think Jeff can attest that mine are usually pretty specific enough that they actually, you don't put your name on them, but he always knows which one's mine. So in the past.
Yeah, well, it's just a more usable, valid, credible document if it has some support to it versus just.
I got it.
Yeah, thank you.
Trails, Brian.
I think this has been pretty well discussed too, but the last Trails Committee meeting was in May. There was numerous work group meetings, during that period of time between then and now. And there was a packet of information sent to the Trails Committee for consideration. You guys should be hearing something soon. That's about all I have.
And in our chats back and forth here the last 15 minutes, we probably going to change the date of that Trails Committee meeting, Carmen, because Matt's out of town that week. So
Okay.
We're looking at going probably the week before on the 11th. But that may, well, actually, hopefully that won't interfere with county meetings or anything, but sometime that week of the 11th, we will try to pencil in a Trails Committee.
Wilmot County is only taking 1 month off this year from a county meeting, and that happens to be July because that's basically when a lot of people are taking their vacations with families and things like that. So we just decided we would take, that would be the only month we would take off. Otherwise, we're meeting regularly. But Brian and I have chatted, so I think he's probably going to address the concerns that have come up for me.
Yeah.
Am I correct on that, Brian?
Yes, you are correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
But we will get that date out once we figure it out.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Safety, Stan.
Yeah, we met this month and we want to try to get ahead of this International Snowmobile Safety Week. And Cindy put a draft together after our meeting for a Military Appreciation Day. VAST has hosted that in the past. And, you know, with COVID, that wasn't something that was able to be done. But the idea would be is kind of broad-based military appreciation, first responder, you know, police, fire, that type of thing. I think we would try to incorporate it all. And obviously it'll have a safety theme. And then maybe have a kids ride that day, you know, have some 120s and a course set up for a little bit of a kids ride. And you know, food, you know, it'll be some sort of a food vendor. And then also, you know, discussion about high visibility of our safety arm, right? So that would be ambassadors being out in force during that week, especially the two bookend weekends, and also try to incorporate as much law enforcement visibility during those 2 weekends as well, and even during the week if we can. But you know, we're going to try to have something that focuses on safety for that International Safety Week. We are not meeting in July, but we will reconvene in August.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Governor's Council, Pat?
The council is on its summer vacation right now. We will meet again in September.
Okay, sounds good. Any other business to come before the board? Nothing?
I have one quick question, I guess, is we're confident that the insurance will be in place by the 1st of September so clubs can continue to do trail work?
Well, we're planning to shut down, but no, yes, we are confident in that.
Well, I mean,
No, I
right?
know.
It's a real deal, right? We thought we were going to have this in place. There was some discussion about having it in place early enough this year that we would try to cancel our insurance with our current carrier, right?
Not by me, because there was no way I was going to be ready to jump the gun at that point.
We didn't
But
know. I
we
mean,
didn't
we had,
know.
yeah, we had no idea. It's just taken a while to get through the Department of Financial Regulation. That's all.
Sure, which is, you know, anything new like this is definitely gonna have hiccups and different things that are gonna slow it down. No question about it. Just my question is that I know that if our other policy runs out, we really shouldn't be on trails working in September, right? If we don't have this in place.
Correct. But Mark, I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I do not anticipate that happening. All communication we've had with our consultant and everything, and even emails with the attorneys and stuff indicate that this week that we'll have our license.
Our current policy goes through the end of September, correct, Cindy?
No, September 1st.
Okay,
And they've been, I emailed them a week ago and reminded them that our insurance is up in September and we need to have this in place and ready to move everything before that.
yeah.
Have you received anything from the current carrier as far as next year?
No, they've already told us they're not going to do it. They're going out of business.
Oh, they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Nationwide is basically, it's Scottsdale and Nationwide, and they're no longer going to be covering any snowmobile organizations. They're literally getting rid of their recreation side. And so all the snowmobile organizations that have been insured by them are getting notices. So we already knew that. But we really, I don't anticipate any problem. I mean, it's been a longer process than we guessed that it might be, but really weren't. But we wanted to make sure that they knew, like, look, we have a deadline of September 1st. And, you know, we need to not just have this document in place, but we need to know about, like, what is it? Like, what, you know, like, we need to talk about coverage and all this kind of stuff, not just get regulated. by September 1st. So, so she said she'd get back to us ASAP. And yeah, and we've been in touch with them constantly. This is our management company I'm talking about. But Jeff Halpin has his hand up, Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Cindy, is there any chance you can get a hold of Nationwide and get a list of everybody they're dumping? So you have somebody, maybe we can expand to those companies. There's a lot of people probably going to be looking for insurance.
Well, it's just the associations. It's not individual people. It's different types of policies. It's just it's just the states in the United States, and we already know. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because
we already know.
I bet you there's going to be a lot of organizations looking because there's not every organization is going to try to do what we're doing. I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Anyone have their hand up that I don't see? Okay. No, thank you all for joining us on this sweltering late June evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Rutland County will make a motion.
Thank you,
Maureen,
Kerry.
seconds.
Thank you, Roger.
Good to see everybody. Be well.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for all you do.